I've never felt exhaustion like the kind that hits you after a double shift in the ER. My feet throbbed inside my worn-out sneakers, my scrubs smelled faintly of antiseptic and someone else's blood, and all I could think about was collapsing on the couch in the quiet house I shared with my grandfather, Harold. It was January, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones, and the drive home felt endless. Snowflakes danced in the headlights as I pulled into the driveway of the old Victorian we'd lived in together for the past 5 years, ever since Grandma passed, and his health started declining. Or so everyone thought. The house was dark except for the soft glow from the porch light I always left on for him. I let myself in, kicking off my shoes in the foyer, calling out softly, "Grandpa. I'm home." No answer. That wasn't unusual, he often dozed off early these days. I hung my coat, dropped my bag by the stairs, and headed toward the kitchen to grab some water before checking on him. That's when I saw it. A single sheet of paper taped to the fridge, right at eye level, as if someone wanted to make sure I wouldn't miss it. The handwriting was my sister-in-law Claire's, sharp, looping letters I'd recognize anywhere. The note read, "Just let the old hag rot. We're done pretending to care. You want to play nurse so badly, Emily. Fine. He's all yours now. Don't call us when he finally kicks the bucket. We'll be too busy enjoying what's rightfully ours." I stared at the words, my tired brain struggling to process them. Old hag. They were talking about Grandpa. My chest tightened as a cold wave of disbelief washed over me. Claire and my brother Mark, along with their mother Vivian, had always been distant, but this was cruel beyond anything I'd imagined. They'd been coming over less and less in recent months, claiming busy schedules, leaving more of Grandpa's care to me. I'd accepted it, even felt relieved in a way, because I loved him fiercely. He'd raised me after my parents died in a car accident, when I was 12. He was the only family I had left who truly felt like home. But this note, it wasn't just cold. It felt final. Threatening. My hands shook as I ripped it off the fridge and crumpled it, then smoothed it out again, reading it twice more as if the words might change. They didn't. A sick feeling settled in my stomach. Something was wrong. Very wrong. I hurried down the hallway toward Grandpa's ground floor bedroom. We'd converted it years ago when stairs became too much for him. The door was ajar, which was unusual. He always kept it closed at night. "Grandpa." I called again, louder this time, pushing the door open. The room smelled wrong, stale, sour, like unwashed linens and something metallic underneath. The bedside lamp was off, the curtains drawn tight. I fumbled for the light switch, heart pounding now. When the soft bulb flickered on, I froze. Grandpa lay in bed, but he looked diminished. His skin was ashen, lips cracked and bluish. His breathing was shallow, almost imperceptible. An empty water glass sat on the nightstand, tipped over, a dark stain on the wood where liquid had spilled and dried days ago. The room hadn't been cleaned in a week at least, dust on the furniture, plates with dried food scraps stacked on a tray in the corner. My knees buckled as I rushed to his side. "Grandpa." "Harold." I touched his forehead, clammy, burning with low-grade fever. His eyes fluttered but didn't open. I checked his pulse, weak, thready. Dehydrated. Severely. How long had he been like this? I'd been at work for 16 hours, but I'd checked on him yesterday morning before my shift. He'd seemed frail but stable. Someone had been here since then. Someone who'd left that note. Tears stung my eyes as I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, giving the operator our address, explaining he was 87, possibly septic, definitely dehydrated. While I waited for the ambulance, I carefully tilted his head and dribbled water from a fresh bottle between his lips. He swallowed reflexively, a tiny sign of hope. "I'm here, Grandpa. I'm so sorry. I'm here now." The paramedics arrived faster than I expected, small-town perks. They worked efficiently, starting in 4, checking vitals, asking questions I could barely answer through my panic. "Any family been visiting?" one asked. I showed them the note. Their faces hardened. "We'll need to report this," the woman said quietly. "Elder neglect is serious." They loaded him onto the stretcher, and I followed in my car to the hospital, my own workplace, ironically. The ER team took over immediately, recognizing me, giving me sympathetic looks as they rushed him to a bay. I stood there in my crumpled scrubs, feeling utterly helpless for the first time in years. Hours crawled by. Fluids, antibiotics, tests. The doctor, an old colleague, pulled me aside eventually. "He's stabilizing. Severe dehydration, early pneumonia, malnutrition. Someone hasn't been caring for him properly, Emily. This didn't happen overnight." I nodded, throat tight, clutching the crumpled note in my pocket like evidence. When they finally let me see him, he was awake, barely. His eyes, usually a sharp blue even in old age, found mine. He tried to speak, but his voice was a rasp. "Water," he whispered. I held the cup for him, helping him sip. "Grandpa, what happened? Who did this?" He closed his eyes for a long moment, then opened them again, and something flickered there. Not just weakness. Something, alert. Knowing. "They think I'm finished." He croaked, the corner of his mouth twitching in what might have been a smile. "But I've been watching, Emmy. I've been watching them all." My breath caught. His words sent a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with the hospital air conditioning. That night in the hospital felt endless. I sat in the plastic chair beside Grandpa's bed, watching the 4 drip steadily into his arm, the monitors beeping their quiet reassurance. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and every so often a nurse would pop in, give me a small smile, and adjust something. I hadn't slept in over 24 hours, but adrenaline kept me wired. The note was still folded in my pocket, its edges digging into my thigh like a constant reminder. By morning, Grandpa was sitting up slightly, color returning to his cheeks. The doctor said the crisis had passed. He'd pulled through remarkably fast for someone his age. "He's tougher than he looks," the attending physician told me with a wink. If only she knew. When we were finally alone, I pulled the note out and smoothed it on the blanket between us. "Grandpa, I found this on the fridge. Claire wrote it. They just left you." His eyes, clearer now, fixed on the paper. A shadow crossed his face, not frailty, but something colder. Controlled anger. He reached for my hand, his grip surprisingly firm. "Emmy," he said, voice still raspy but steady, "I've been waiting for you to see the truth. I didn't want to drag you into this mess, but they've forced my hand." I frowned. "What truth?" "You've been sick for years, dementia, the doctors said. Weak spells. That's why I moved in, why I've been taking care of everything." He let out a low, dry chuckle that turned into a cough. I helped him sip water until it passed. When he spoke again, there was a sharpness in his tone I hadn't heard in ages. "Dementia? Weak spells? Sweetheart, that was the performance of my life." He paused, letting the words sink in. 5 years ago, after your grandmother died, I started noticing things. Little discrepancies in the accounts. Money moving where it shouldn't. Claire and Mark whispering about when the old man finally goes. Vivian asking too many questions about my will. I'd built a tech company from nothing in the 80s, sold it for hundreds of millions before most of these kids knew what a smartphone was. I'm not some doddering fool, Emmy. I'm old, yes. But my mind. He tapped his temple. Sharp as ever. My mouth went dry. You faked it. Not entirely. Age catches up with everyone. But the confusion? The forgetting names? The trembling hands? I exaggerated. On purpose. I wanted to see who would stay loyal when they thought I wouldn't notice. When they thought I was slipping away and couldn't fight back. I sat back, reeling. All those times I'd gently reminded him of my name on bad days, thinking I was helping him hold on to reality, he'd been testing me. Testing all of us. And the others? I asked quietly. His expression darkened. They failed spectacularly. Claire stopped visiting unless she needed money. Mark only came when Vivian sent him to check on the investments. They started treating the house like it was already theirs, moving furniture, taking Grandma's jewelry for safekeeping. I let them think I didn't notice. But I noticed everything. He shifted in the bed, wincing slightly. There's more. Worse. I've been collecting proof. But I couldn't move too soon. I needed them to go far enough that there'd be no coming back. Proof of what? My voice was barely above a whisper. Embezzlement, for starters. They've been siphoning from the charitable foundation I set up in your grandmother's name. Small amounts at first, then bolder. And lately, he hesitated, eyes searching mine. Lately, I've felt worse than age alone could explain. Dizziness that came in waves. Confusion that felt chemical. I started wondering if they were helping things along. A chill ran through me. You think they were poisoning you? I know they were trying. I've had my suspicions for months. That's why I installed the cameras. Cameras. He nodded toward the window, as if seeing the house in his mind. The whole place is wired, smart home system I designed myself decades ago, upgraded quietly over the years. Motion activated, cloud-backed, voice recorded. Every room except the bathrooms. They thought I was too senile to notice the tiny lenses in the smoke detectors, the bookshelf clocks. I've watched them laugh about me, plan how they'd split the estate, argue over who'd get the lake house. I've seen Claire crush pills into my tea when she thought I was napping. I've heard Vivian tell Mark to speed things up before the nurse granddaughter gets suspicious. Bile rose in my throat. I'd trusted them. Let them into our home. Defended them when friends asked why my brother barely called. Grandpa squeezed my hand again. I didn't want you to know any of this until I was sure you were safe from it. You've been the only one who stayed, Emmy. The only one who cared without an agenda. That's why I held on. Tears blurred my vision. All those nights I'd sat with him reading old letters, feeding him soup, thinking I was easing his final years, he'd been protecting me. Watching over me just as much. What do we do now? I asked. His eyes gleamed with something fierce and alive. Now? We stop pretending. Now we show them exactly what happens when you underestimate the people you're supposed to love. Grandpa was discharged 2 days later, stronger than anyone expected. The doctors chalked it up to good genes and my quick intervention, but I knew better. As we drove home in silence, snow still dusting the streets, I kept glancing at him. He sat straight in the passenger seat, eyes fixed on the familiar neighborhood passing by, a small, satisfied smile playing on his lips. The frail old man the world had seen for years was peeling away like a costume, revealing someone I'd almost forgotten, the brilliant, commanding Harold who'd built an empire from circuit boards and sheer will. When we pulled into the driveway, the house looked exactly as we'd left it, except for the faint tire tracks in the snow leading away from the garage. Someone had come and gone while we were at the hospital. My stomach twisted. Inside, the air felt heavier. The note was gone from the fridge. Claire or Vivian must have panicked and removed it, but the stale smell in Grandpa's room lingered. He walked straight there without his usual shuffle. No cane, no hesitant steps. I followed, heart racing. Close the door, Emmy, he said quietly. I did. He moved to the bookshelf along the far wall, reached behind a row of old engineering manuals, and pressed something I'd never noticed, a small panel that clicked open. A hidden keypad glowed softly. He entered a code, and the entire bookshelf swung inward on silent hinges, revealing a narrow staircase leading down. My breath caught. Grandpa, what is this? My real office, he replied, voice steady. The one no one knows about. Come on. I followed him down the carpeted steps into a climate-controlled basement room that looked like something out of a spy movie. One wall was lined with servers humming quietly, another covered in monitors displaying live feeds from every room in the house, kitchen, living room, bedrooms, even the porch. A large desk held multiple laptops, a secure phone, and stacks of neatly labeled drives. The air smelled faintly of ozone and coffee. He settled into the ergonomic chair like he'd never left it, gesturing for me to take the one beside him. Welcome to the nerve center. I built this when we renovated after your grandmother's passing. Once he's gone, the house alone is worth $3 million. We just have to make sure little Miss Perfect Nurse doesn't contest the will. I felt sick. Betrayed didn't even cover it. These were people I'd grown up calling family. But the worst was a group chat screenshot, pulled from cloud backups of their phones via the home Wi-Fi he controlled. Messages from the day I found the note. Claire, she's on shift till midnight. Plenty of time. Vivian, leave the note. Make it clear we're done. She'll panic, call an ambulance, and by the time anyone asks questions, it'll look like she neglected him. Mark, and if he doesn't make it. Bonus. Claire, either way, we're free. The old man's been dragging this out long enough. Grandpa let me read in silence. When I finally looked up, tears were streaming down my face, not just sadness but rage. Pure, burning rage. They were willing to let you die, I whispered. They were counting on it, he corrected. But here's the beautiful part, Emmy. Every clip is time-stamped, backed up off-site, encrypted. Audio crystal clear. Financial trails audited by a forensic accountant I hired quietly last year. And the poisoning. I had blood drawn at the hospital, independent lab. Tox screen came back positive for the exact meds Claire was crushing. Undeniable. He leaned back, folding his hands. I've spent 5 years gathering this because I needed it ironclad. No room for them to spin a story. No misunderstanding. Just cold, hard proof. I wiped my eyes, trying to process. So what now? We go to the police. He smiled, not kindly, but with the sharp edge of a man who'd outmaneuvered competitors for decades. Not yet. First, we make them feel safe. Let them think they've won. Then we invite them here, for a family meeting, to discuss my care after the hospital scare. They'll come running, thinking the end is near, and they need to secure their positions. I stared at him. You want to trap them. I want them to dig their graves a little deeper on camera. One last performance where they show exactly who they are. Then we bury them with it. A shiver ran through me, but not from fear. From the cold clarity of it. Justice, calculated and complete. He reached over and took my hand again. I couldn't have done this without you, Emmy. You staying, caring, loving me when no one else did, that gave me the strength to keep going. Now I need you to help me finish it. Are you in? I looked at the screens, at the evidence of their cruelty frozen in time. Then back at the man who'd raised me, who'd protected me even while pretending to fade. I squeezed his hand. All the way. We spent the next week preparing with surgical precision. Grandpa's health miraculously improved each day, no more trembling hands, no more confused stares. He walked the house unaided, cooked simple meals, even shoveled the front path one afternoon just to plant the seed. I sent a group text from his phone. He'd long ago synced all their numbers, feeling much better after the hospital scare. Need to discuss future care arrangements and the foundation. Family meeting this Saturday at 2 p.m. Please come. Important. They replied almost immediately. Claire, of course, Grandpa. So glad you're on the mend. Wouldn't miss it. Mark, on our way. We'll bring lunch. Vivian, finally some good news. See you Saturday, Dad. Grandpa read the messages aloud in the basement office, voice dripping with dry amusement. They smell blood in the water. They think I'm ready to sign over power of attorney, update the will in their favor. Perfect. Saturday arrived crisp and bright. I baked cookies, comforting smells to lower their guard, and set the dining room table with Grandma's good china. Grandpa wore his old navy blazer, the one he used to wear to board meetings. He looked every inch the patriarch again. They arrived together in Mark's new SUV, all fake smiles and concerned faces. Claire carried a casserole for later, Vivian clutched a folder of helpful documents, and Mark had a bottle of Grandpa's favorite scotch, probably planning to loosen tongues. Hugs were exchanged, exclamations about how wonderful he looked, how strong. I played along, offering coffee, forcing smiles while my pulse hammered. We settled around the table. Small talk about weather, holidays, work. Then Vivian cleared her throat. Dad, we're so relieved you're better. But after the hospital, we really think it's time to make some practical decisions. For your safety. Grandpa nodded slowly, the picture of frail gratitude. I agree. That's why I asked you here. Emily and I have been talking, and there are things you all need to know. Claire leaned forward eagerly. We're listening. He glanced at me. Showtime. I stood, walked to the living room, and wheeled in the large TV we'd set up that morning. Their eyes followed, curious but not yet alarmed. Grandpa spoke again, voice calm. Before we discuss anything, I want us to remember Elizabeth, my wife, your mother and grandmother. She always believed family stuck together through thick and thin. So let's watch a little montage I put together. Memories of the last few years. I pressed play. The screen lit up with crystal clear footage, the kitchen camera first. Claire 6 months ago, crushing pills into a mug labeled Grandpa's tea. Audio captured her muttering, this should make him sleep through the weekend. Claire's face went white. Next clip, Vivian in the study, photographing bank documents, whispering to Mark on speakerphone, once he's declared incompetent, we move the rest into the Cayman account. Mark shifted in his seat, eyes darting. Then the hallway camera, Vivian spitting into a bowl of soup before carrying it to Grandpa's room. Saying loudly for his benefit, here's dinner, Dad. Eat up. Vivian gasped. Clip after clip rolled, dozens of them, time-stamped, indisputable. The group chat screenshots overlaid with voiceovers of their own words. The forged signature attempts. The day they left the note and walked out laughing. The room was deathly silent except for the audio of their past cruelty. When the final clip ended, their text celebrating his hospital admission as perfect timing, Grandpa stood slowly. I believe, he said, voice like steel, we have some explaining to do. Claire tried first. This is edited. Taken out of context. Mark stood abruptly. You spied on us. In your own house. Grandpa smiled coldly. My house. My rules. And yes, I watched you plan to murder me for money. Slowly. Painfully. while the one person who actually loved me worked double shifts to keep me alive. Vivian's folder slipped from her hands, papers scattering. Dad, please. Don't, I said, speaking for the first time. My voice didn't shake. Don't beg now. You didn't care when he was dehydrated and burning with fever. You didn't care when you thought he'd die alone. 2 unmarked cars pulled into the driveway, quiet, no sirens. We'd timed it perfectly. 4 officers entered with a warrant, courtesy of the district attorney Grandpa had contacted days earlier. Claire screamed as cuffs clicked around her wrists. Mark swore, struggling until warned of additional charges. Vivian collapsed into a chair, sobbing about ruined lives. As they were led out, Grandpa spoke one last time. You wanted what was rightfully yours. Enjoy prison. It's the only thing you'll inherit. The door closed behind them. The house fell silent except for distant car doors slamming. I looked at Grandpa. He looked at me. And for the first time in years, we both smiled, real, free smiles. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, media calls, and quiet healing. The evidence we presented was so overwhelming that the district attorney fast-tracked charges: attempted murder, elder abuse, embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy. Claire, Mark, and Vivian were denied bail, flight risk, the judge said, citing the offshore accounts. Their names splashed across local news: prominent family charged with poisoning patriarch for inheritance. Reporters camped outside the house until Grandpa's lawyers issued a statement on our behalf. I took a leave of absence from the hospital. For the first time in years, I wasn't running on empty. Grandpa and I spent long evenings in the basement office, sorting through decades of his life, old patents, photos of him and Grandma at tech conferences, letters from employees whose lives his company had changed. He told stories I'd never heard, about starting in a garage with nothing but an idea and grit. I listened, marveling at the man he'd always been beneath the facade. The trial lasted only 4 days. Our footage played in court, gasps rippled through the gallery each time. Claire sobbed on the stand, claiming she'd been coerced. Mark tried to shift blame to Vivian. Vivian stayed silent, face stone-cold until sentencing. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. Claire and Mark received 25 years each. Vivian, as the architect, got 30. The judge's words still echo in my mind: this was not a crime of passion or desperation. It was calculated cruelty against a man who had given this family everything. There will be no leniency. Their assets were seized to repay the foundation, every hidden account, the SUV, the vacation home. They left court in orange jumpsuits, heads down, no longer the polished people who'd walked into our dining room that Saturday. Grandpa and I watched the news coverage once, then turned it off. Some things you don't need to relive. Spring came early that year. The snow melted, revealing the garden Grandma had loved. We hired help to restore it: roses, hydrangeas, the works. Grandpa walked the paths daily, no cane, breathing deep. At 88, he moved like a man who'd shed 20 years of weight. One afternoon, he called me to the office. On the main monitor was a new document: revised trust and will. Everything, the house, the remaining fortune, the foundation, left to me. But with a directive. I'm not going to be around forever, Emmy, he said quietly. And I don't want this money sitting in banks or funding vanity projects. I wanted to do what your grandmother always dreamed: help kids who have no one. Hospitals, scholarships, safe homes. You know what it's like to lose parents young. You know what real care feels like. I tried to protest, but he raised a hand. You've earned this, not because you're blood, but because you chose kindness when no one else did. Run the Elizabeth Foundation your way. Make it bigger. Make it matter. Within months, we relaunched it nationwide. I stepped down from nursing, though I still volunteer, and took the helm as executive director. We funded pediatric wings, grief counseling programs, caregiver support networks. The first wing we opened bore both their names, Harold and Elizabeth Reynolds Center for Family Healing. Grandpa lived to see it dedicated. He stood at the podium in a sharp suit, voice strong, telling the crowd about a granddaughter who saved his life twice, once with medicine, once with love. Cameras flashed. I stood beside him, tears in my eyes, feeling Grandma's presence in the sunlight streaming through the new windows. He passed peacefully 2 years later, in his sleep, at 90. I held his hand until the end. No lingering illness, no pain, just a life well finished. At the funeral, the church overflowed. Not with the greedy relatives who'd once circled like vultures, but with people whose lives he'd touched. Former employees, kids from the foundation, nurses who'd cared for him briefly and remembered his sharp wit. I spoke last. I learned from the best, I said, that real strength isn't in money or power. It's in choosing decency when no one's watching. It's in protecting the vulnerable, even when it costs you. My grandfather taught me that. And he proved that no matter how dark things get, kindness wins in the end. Afterward, I went home, to our home, now mine, and sat in the garden as dusk fell. The roses were in full bloom. I thought about the note on the fridge, the hospital nights, the basement screens. I thought about how close we'd come to losing everything. If you're watching this, maybe you're going through something similar. Maybe someone's underestimated you, betrayed you, counted you out. Take it from me, keep being kind. Keep records if you have to. Keep loving fiercely. Because one day, the truth comes out. And when it does, the people who stood by you, the ones who chose love over greed, will be the ones still standing. Karma isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, patient, and unstoppable. Just like us.